But I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank the ranking member for putting this together today. It's a powerfully important hearing that we have today. We have all been touched by cancer. And so for you to come forward and give us hope is very important, but also give us guidance on the direction we go. I'm hoping to have many opportunities today to ask about, particularly about our federal investments in research and the importance of those investments and how we make the most of what we can do and what we do know. I also want to ask about palliative care when we have a chance. You know, Mr. Kennett said research saves lives. Ms. Harper said research dollars equal lives. So I'd like to pick up where Senator Collins was on the question about investments and investments at NIH. And I particularly want to just build the record a little bit here about the relationship between federal spending and long-term savings on health care. You know, a few years ago, an NIH study found that in 2010, the nation spent about $124 billion on cancer care. That's almost 3 times bigger than last year's sequester cuts, and it is 25 times bigger than the entire annual budget of the National Cancer Institute. So, Dr. Varmus, I just want to start with a different way to think about this question. Can you comment on how much money we could save the healthcare system if we could better prevent even one type of cancer? Push a button.
I should know by now. But, we can approach that in several ways. Sure. The NCI itself has taken the data on which you base the $124 billion of spending in 2010 and built an algorithm that's available online to show how much we spend on care for any of these cancers. I think you have to add to that other kinds of potential savings. When people die at an early age or become incapacitated by cancer or can no longer work because of it, we have big expenditures there too that are very important to calculate. And then people have their valuation of life, which is another thing that we like to think about when we do the calculation of how much we would gain if we could reduce the frequency and reduce the cost of supporting someone who's going through cancer treatment. So the maximum, of course, would be the total amount of money we now spend, and we can give you those numbers for each type of cancer, and we can even divide that into the amount we spend when a cancer is diagnosed, when care is continuing, and the latter stages of cancer journeys that end unhappily. Yeah. So it's possible to give you good numbers, but I think it's just overall important to emphasize the multiplicity of kinds of savings we could achieve. And secondly, the fact that whenever these economic analyses are done, we usually come back to the fact that the public, everybody wants to be healthier. People do not want to have cancer, and that is hard to place a dollar value on, but it's an incredibly important aspect of what we do and what I believe the country should be investing in.
Well, I think that's a powerful answer that you give, a reminder that even the dollars we talk about that we currently spend in the healthcare system on cancer doesn't come close to identifying all of the costs, all of the out-of-pocket costs, much less all of the human costs associated with it. But that makes it, to me, all the more mystifying that we have not increased our funding for NIH, that in fact, as you rightly say, if we do a BR, what is it, DPI, that's right, I'll get it right. That's right. That if we do even a modest inflation adjustment, that we're down somewhere between 20 and 25% in terms of spending since 2000. As I understand it, right now, NIH is able to fund, has the resources to fund only 1 in 6 of the research applications. And I want to ask you, Dr. Varmus, just to tell us, are the other 5 applications not worth funding? What does this mean that we are now in a situation where only 1 in 5 research proposals?
At NCI, Senator, it's actually a little worse than that. We fund about 13% of the applications, that is, we turn down 87%. Mm-hmm. Now, historically, I would not sit here and say every one of those grants should be funded. historically, the NIH seems to function very well when we fund about a third of our applications. And I say that in part because as someone who has sat in review and who's overseen large numbers of grant applications, we can tell the top third pretty well. When we have to dissect out of that top third the 1 out of 3 or so that actually get funded, we're in trouble. Moreover, that number is slightly deceptive because new proposals are often, as opposed to renewals, don't do as well. And in very hot fields of research where a lot of progress is being made, the rate of success may be even lower because there's so many applications that are being looked at. So I think it's just impossible, and there's data to support the idea that we're not very good at telling the top 10% from the second tier, the second 10% of our applications. And we know that we are missing important opportunities, and we're seeing the ends of careers of people in whom the NIH has invested a lot of money because we generally paid for the training, either directly through fellowships or through the support of students on grants, and yet people get to a certain stage in life and then they are unable to get funded. The dean of the medical school doesn't like it when you don't get funding, and careers terminate inappropriately. So we're extremely concerned about the issues you're raising.
So if the chairman will indulge me for one more question, I'd just like to ask Dr. Sellers if he'd weigh in a little bit on the impact of underfunding the NIH and other medical research on the development of new therapies, new approaches, a more comprehensive approach to treatment in the cancer area. Dr. Sellers?
One of the consequences of the exceedingly painful pay lines is that it promotes scientists who are in the business of science, right? If you don't get your grants, the dean's mad, you're not going to keep your lab going. To push for really boring incremental steps. We don't have time for that, right? We need bold thinking, we need innovation, we need people to take some chances. Not everything should be mad crazy out there, but we're doing such obvious next step incremental stuff because that's what the study sections have gravitated to. Well, we know this will work. If we've got X amount of dollars to invest, we want to make sure that we get something out of it. And I think that's absolutely stifling the biomedical research community. I agree with Dr. Varmus' comment that you don't want to fund all of them, but we've gone to the other end of the spectrum, and we're funding incremental science rather than a nice balanced portfolio where we're swinging for the fences some of the times.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go over my time. And I want to say thank you again to Mr. Kennett and Ms. Harper for getting out there and being advocates on behalf of better funding for NIH. We can do more. We can do so much more, but we're all going to have to pull together on this and follow Senator Collins' leadership and the leadership of others on it. Thank you.